There's the clapping. Welcome to Build. I'm your host, Ricky Camilleri. Our next guest is the hilarious comedian Russell Howard, who is about to embark on a world tour, which he, for some reason, is calling a Respite. You can see him this weekend where he's doing 3 shows at the Gramercy Theater. And before we bring him out, let's watch a funny clip.
We have such a messed up relationship with booze in this country. I mean, did you see this? Police are being sent to Ibiza and Magaluf to control drunk Brits abroad. How British is that? We have to take our own police on holiday with us.
This is my husband, Tony. This is my daughter, Sarah. And this is PC Watkins. He has to come with us, because when I've had a couple of Prosecco's, I try and chew people's faces off. I'm horrible. I'm an horrible pig. I got the rage in me. Normally I'm fine, but after a couple of them, I'll kill you.
We waste. That was a bit real, wasn't it?
Russell Howard, everybody. Let's hear it.
Hello, hello.
Hey, thanks so much for being here, man.
Thanks for having me.
So the world tour that you are about to embark on is called the Respite.
Yes, see, in English we say respite in the UK, but it's been respite or respite. But yeah, respite is how you'd say it if you were from England.
Why are you calling... Is that where you're from?
It is where I'm from, yes.
Oh, I was...
And I get more English when I'm in America.
Why the respite?
Because the world's in a terrible state, and I feel like we need a rest from it. So that's what I'm going to try and do. Is
a lot of the material that you're doing about the world at large, or are you trying to pull back from talking about that?
It's about the world at the minute. Yeah, certainly. So in the UK, I'm not sure if you guys have heard of a little thing called Brexit, but that's certainly dominating the news where I'm from. It's like people are preparing for it like it's the apocalypse. There is a course, I'm not making this up, in the north of England where people are being taught to fight and how to eat dog food in the event of Brexit going badly. And I would argue you don't need to be taught how to eat dog food. I think that's a choice you make. No one's ever looked at dog food and gone, it looks delicious, but what's the etiquette?
Right, does that course mainly consist of just sort of getting yourself acquainted with dog food?
Well, apparently, is it chopsticks? Is it fork? Is it red wine white? Also, if you're eating dog food in the street, you're not going to need to fight because people will leave you alone.
Why do they think that it's going to go that poorly?
Well, it will. It's not going to be great, but I'm not sure if it'll... Do you have Win-A-Lot here? Is that a dog food?
We have dog food.
Clearly not Win-A-Lot, but it's not going to get to that level. The only person I've ever seen eat dog food was my brother for a £20 bet.
Are you nervous about Brexit?
Yes. Yeah, because it's similar to here. That the problem is that the fallout is wild division. So the country is broken now. It's just name calling, and it's politics in the UK. The right are too right, and the left are too left. So you have like Brexit means Brexit. I want my country back, and over here it's just as bad. It's like, what are we going to call female fishermen? And you're like, it's not your country, vajanglers. Can we not discuss something that matters? Because the problem is, you have a similar thing over here with Trump, that we get taken by these big personalities. They take us away, and we engage in the tittle-tattle of what they say, so we don't deal with the bigger issues. So the NHS is crumbling. You have nurses using food banks in the UK. There's genuine problems. Knife crime is a big problem in London at the minute, and none of these things are getting dealt with because we're dealing about an issue in Brexit that, bear in mind, 20 years ago, a survey was done saying what do British people worry about the most, and 0.03% of them said Europe. So it's a fascinating analysis as to how we can be riled up about something that we don't really care about.
How do you think there's lots of theories, there's lots of conspiracy theories about how the British got riled up over Brexit. How do you think it started?
What's the conspiracy theory you've heard? Because go on. I'm intrigued. I haven't heard. I want to know the Americans.
I say conspiracy theory, but I mean, obviously, like we talk about our election here, Russian meddling, social media.
Yes.
You also have, I think, a number of your politicians who were sort of Brexit leaders were essentially being paid by
they
were meeting with or being paid by Russian firms, I think, right?
I don't know about that, but they were certainly.
Exactly, conspiracy theories. I prefaced it with being like, I don't know
see.
shit.
Yeah, well, they've told, our politicians have told more lies than a Tinder profile. That is definitely the case. So Boris Johnson said we were going to get 350 million per week for the NHS. A lot of people hold that very dear. So they were like, yes. We also have a press that has told amazing lies. There's a website, I forget the name of it, but a specific EU blogger that has basically debunked every lie ever told. So there's been lies like the EU, the European Union, is going to make cows wear nappies. That was one. The EU is going to make...
Oh, we have that right now, too, where they're saying, like, the Green New Deal will eliminate cows, or, like, no one will be able to have a hamburger anymore. And
Yeah,
it's like, well,
but they're incredible. So the EU were going to force the Queen to make her own tea, was another. The EU were going to... yogurt was going to be called fermented milk pudding. And my favourite, this is honestly, was in The Sun, that said the EU will force women to hand back used sex toys. And I don't want to... I mean, how do you begin to police that? Like, come out with a dildo above your head. She's turning the weapon on herself. It seems
like the like sheepish cops like showing up. Do you have a?
But the point. But the
do you
point
have a
is,
vibrator in there? Sorry.
We've had 20 years of this just slowly drip feeding that people have begun to see. You know, Brussels is the great enemy, and you know.
Do you find the way that I mean, I've become quite cynical, and it's this weird position that we're in this country right now, where because our president is constantly battling the media and defacing them and insulting them, that we suddenly have to defend them and can't be as critical as them of them as we maybe should be. But at the same time, they are more than willing to publish the lies of politicians without any kind of like. Just the headline, which is the only thing that people are reading.
Yeah, well, that's the problem because it's 24-hour news, so you have to fill the content. So if you get somebody nuanced talking about Brexit, go, well, this could be good, this could be bad. You know, that's not going to be as good as they're gonna take sex toys from cows, like that will. No, but that...
I'm so glad you did that. Just like the first thing that I imagined was the reaction from the cow.
The problem with your cow is that cows have no sort of emotional range. Right. So they always sound, you know, like you've never heard a cow go, meow.
Which is also the sound of someone who's just gotten their sex toy
this
taken
is
away.
It, yeah. What was I talking about? So I'm very jet lagged.
You're talking about 24-hour news cycle.
Yeah, so the world over, if you get a crazy from the right or the left coming on, and they talk more passionately and quickly and wildly, and then the news can then talk about the fallout. So we end up chattering about the nonsense rather than the issue, and that happens the world over because it's easier. You get more clicks if somebody comes on and starts the great bovine sex debate.
We could go on to the cow sex toy thing for a long time.
Oh,
sure, yeah.
Sure, yeah.
What do you think the sex toy that the cow prefers generally is?
I tell you honestly, when I woke up this morning, I imagined many questions I'd be asked. That wasn't one of them. I guess you would have to have quite a lengthy thing operated by somebody on a trampoline.
Absolutely right. That's exactly what I was picturing. Thank you. Yeah, you brought it to life. Thank you.
Next question.
When did you start doing comedy?
When I was 18.
And had you always wanted to be in comedy? And how did that start?
So I started writing jokes when I was 15, and eventually I plucked up the courage when I was 18 to do a gig, and it went well.
Did it really?
It was great. Yeah, the first 6 were amazing, and then I had an absolute stinker. But yeah, the first 6 were ace.
You had good first 6 gigs. Wow.
Yeah.
That's incredible. And what happened on the 7th?
I kind of got a bit cocky and started sort of swaggering about and sort of veering away from my material. And yeah, not good. Yeah, but kind of useful, and then you get used to it, and that's what happens.
Have you found at this point that you can veer away from your material? And
yeah, I wasn't planning on talking about cows and dildos, and yeah, it was all right. But yeah, so I'm a lot more relaxed.
Because most comedians say that when they first start, they try to really stick to the jokes that they have written, and it's all about just kind of getting the audience's attention and making them laugh. And after a number of years, you can get to this place where you can kind of guide them along a little bit in a looser way.
But I was a kid as well. I was 18, so I didn't really have anything to talk about. But
what were some of your jokes, or like what was the joke you
wow,
remember?
Really? Okay.
Oh, if it's embarrassing, don't worry.
No. What was my? One of my first, I did a joke about how did Captain Kirk get through the Star Trek episodes without once flicking Spock's ears. That was one of my.
It's still good.
I stand by it.
Yeah,
You know,
I laughed.
you never saw it once, but that was about it. And then it was a joke. There was a joke. We went on a family holiday to Tunisia, and a man offered 15 camels for my sister. And my mum said, and I quote, "What, am I invisible?" So it was her take on that. So those were the two, and yeah, I think about the Craig David song. Do you remember that? The 7 Days. I'm not sure if that was a song here. I met a girl on Monday, took her for a drink.
Oh, maybe, yeah,
Remember that song?
vaguely.
Yeah, I had some stuff about that. Yeah. What were you doing when you were?
Some stuff about that.
What were you doing when you were 18?
I was in college.
There you go. That's where I should have been.
No, you made the right decision.
I was
I
on
think.
stage like that. Are you proud, Mum? Are you proud?
And when did you, when you started hosting your show, did you know that it was going to be a lot concerning politics for the most part, like that you were going to be doing a lot of news coverage?
Yeah, because it was called Good News.
Well, the first,
So
one.
yeah,
The
yeah.
second one was the Russell Howard.
No,
Yeah.
sure. So the first one, I just thought, it has to be about the news.
Smartass.
I mean, it's in the. No, that was me being a dick.
I
But
deserved it.
no, you didn't. That was beneath me, and it was beneath me and the standards of my country.
I enjoyed it. I'll tell you.
I apologise.
Please don't. I enjoyed it.
So I've been doing stand-up for sort of over just under 10 years. So I got the show, and we just we cracked on. And I wasn't necessarily a political comic, and then I got older, got more interested in the world. So I'd learned all these tools, and then I was able to chat about it. But not in a lot of satire in the UK is quite kind of. There's a lot of clapter.
What does that mean?
So clapter is, that kind of when you say a point that your audience is going to enjoy, and they don't laugh, they're just like, oh, yeah, and you don't really, it's pretty simple. Yeah. So I think it's much more important to write a good joke on a topic rather than, have people cheer what they already think.
Yeah, I would agree with
Do you
that.
know what I mean?
Think that we're
but a lot of satire is very much.
I think that we're seeing a lot of that here too in the Trump era. Unfortunately,
Yeah.
it's much easier to just sort of call him a bad name or say something that everybody agrees with and consider that.
Well, rather
satire.
the nitty gritty is phenomenal with Trump. That's what's extraordinary. That during the government shutdown, he made it easier for men to commit domestic abuse. That's a fascinating fact worth pointing out, isn't it? Or that he got the transgender ban in the military through whilst the government was shut down. So if you dig deep, you can find stuff. You don't have to just talk about the silly things he said. You can really get at the nub of the matter, but it takes a little while.
But because he says all these silly things, it distracts people from
Well,
talking
it's a lot
about
easier, isn't it? It's a lot easier to go, look, he said a silly thing. Let's
But
go after
at the same time, what's so interesting about that is that Barack Obama didn't say silly things, right? But there were things that his administration did that were bad or that,
Sure.
weren't helpful.
Yeah.
But because he also wasn't saying as big, silly things, nobody was really paying attention to anything
Yeah.
that he was doing unless they were like very far on the right side
Sure.
of the country, You almost need the big, silly, orange, wet baby to sort of force everybody to look at everything in some way, even if
The
they
big,
miss
silly,
stuff.
orange, wet baby is actually the sex toy of choice for the cat.
The cat,
Yeah.
Bringing it back. I like it. So what can people expect on this tour?
They can expect a photo of me looking a little bit like Bon Jovi. It was so embarrassing. I had the piss ripped out of me by my mates because that's the poster for the new tour. And the day after, Bon Jovi's tour poster came out, and it's exactly the same. And everyone was like,
Living on a prayer.
Yeah, exactly. You just nicked it off Bon Jovi. It'll be. I'm going to try and make it really funny about the world and about us, and try and bridge as many divides as possible and talk about things I care about. That's
Do you see yourself as a bridge builder, or as trying to sort of like bring
I'm
people
kind
from
of
the
a
far
positive-
right and far left together in some way?
Well, interestingly, with I can only go off of Brexit. So Brexit is wildly divided. So I took real pleasure in trying to make it funny rather than because no comedian is going to change anyone's point of view on a thing. So that was the aim, was to try and make it as funny as possible. Still have a bit of soul. And that's kind of my aim. Increasingly, like my last tour, I had a big bit about 1 in 4 16 to 25-year-old girls in the UK self-harm. And I had a whole routine about this, about how upsetting I found that and trying to understand why, and sort of figuring out a lot of it was to do with body image and a lot of it to do with trying to compete with porn. And I kind of pointed out that porn and sex are very different things. You know, as anyone who've ever filmed themselves will prove. Do you know what I mean? You're like two potatoes fighting, but that's correct. So it was an analysis of that we live in an era of flesh and vapidity when we are more magnificent than any of this. So that was a bit, it was like a 15-minute bit, but it really worked. And I was doing these huge rooms in the UK, like, you know, 15,000 people. And the sort of prevailing idea is you can't talk about things like that in a room like that. It has to be like airplane food and men and women and blah, blah, blah. But the honest truth is that people are interested and fascinated by topics like that because you hear a stat like that and it upsets you. And if you're a mum or a dad, you want to help your children. You want to talk about them. And that was the kind of aim of it, as well as 15 minutes of kind of jokes around that. So I really kind of get off on trying to do stuff like that the further I get into comedy, because I find it, not to sound like a dick, I find it relatively easy, so I want to try and talk about things that I care about.
Is it harder to write jokes about things that you care about, or to
No,
write
it's
jokes?
much easier. It's so hard to write jokes on stuff that you don't care about.
But what
my
about to
God.
like make a point while you're also writing jokes? Do you find like
Oh, that's so much easier. I couldn't.
Really?
Oh, mate, yeah, I couldn't write kind of quirky stand-up about, like, if you asked me to write 15 minutes on cauliflower bases or pencils, I'd just be, I'm going to struggle. But if you asked me to write on Brexit, I could do it, you know, or, you know, you asked me to write. I'm fascinated at the minute that we live in an era of sensitivity, and yet a lot of scientists say the world humans may be extinct within 200 years, and yet we live in an era where we're doing baby Reiki. Like, do you know what I mean? Baby yoga. Like, these babies need to be taught how to forage.
well, people
The world is dying. We spend more money in the UK on a cure for baldness than you know, the end of us as a species.
Well, it's a sense of individual control, right? Because there's no idea of collectivism anymore,
Yes.
or like any kind of control over the powers that be.
Yeah.
Even if you are in a democracy, you don't feel like those who govern you in any way represent you or are serving you best. So the most you can control is like, I'll lose 5 pounds today. I'll go for a run, or I'll like fix my bald spot or something, or do Reiki on my baby. When you were doing the porn, the Age of
Finish
Flesh
that
bit,
sentence quickly.
Age of Flesh bit.
When I was doing the porn.
Did you find, like, how many men did you think like heard it and were like, yeah, absolutely, and then just went home and watched pornography?
Oh no, I think I think I don't know is the honest truth. I didn't do a survey.
I just imagine like everyone
but it's
like
a very
agreeing and clapping and be like, yeah, and then getting home and be like, porn.
Sure, yeah, but that's a very good point. I mean, you've rendered my my efforts pointless, but I mean that's funny in itself, isn't it? Imagine that if I met somebody, there was a guy, you know, like we're in the supermarket, he's like, I really enjoyed your bit on porn. I thought it was really interesting, and I went, "You still masturbating?" I'm doing a survey. The man in America asked me, and I didn't have an answer, and I don't ever want to come up short again. Can I ask you how many times a day? Okay.
Would it be worse if you had an answer to that and you were like, well, actually,
yeah, exactly.
my audience...
47% of people.
Still jerking it. Still jerking it.
Yeah. Yeah. That's what I often think about the film Castaway. Like, there's not one scene of Tom Hanks masturbating. Now, listen, if I arrive, and New York's got a lot to offer, and yet one of the first things I did when I arrived here was empty myself. The fact, listen, you asked, but...
Well, you're in a hotel room. That's like the first, like...
Yeah, but Hanks is on his own. And we don't see him have a poo. We don't see him masturbate. Straight away, he's trying to build a raft. Bullshit. Where's the truth? Where's the outtakes to Castaway? That's why he was upset when Wilson left. He was banging it.
Before he even... I mean, the fact that he made a male volleyball, too, and he was like a straight... That kind of didn't sit well with me either, right?
Exactly.
But the fact that, he made a raft right away instead of just being like...
That's what I mean.
All right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it would have been a bleaker film. Let's not deny. But a
Several scenes
But a
of
reality.
him.
Yeah, exactly.
Back to the camera,
Just
hunched over.
Wilson turned around like the Blair Witch. What was the question?
Just fantasizing about getting out of here.
Yeah.
We actually have a question from our audience.
great.
Who has a question? Oh, hey.
Hi.
Hello.
Hello.
Hey, how you doing?
Good. How are you?
Very well, thank you. What was your name?
Kaylin.
Kaylin, nice to meet you.
You too. I had a question about just performing for different audiences because a lot of your comedy is based around like politics. What sort of preparation do you do to make sure your jokes will hit with all the different audiences?
I normally do a small gig and then try it out in a bigger gig. And then sometimes that can't happen. And then you just go, like I did a gig in Finland, right? And this isn't about politics. I saw a man eating chips and a pigeon flew by and the man grabbed that pigeon and went, "No!" and threw the pigeon away. So we all laugh. Ah, that's unusual. So I went on stage in Finland. Nobody laughed because apparently that's what Finnish people do. They grab pigeons midair. So I bombed. They're like, why are you telling us about something we all like? So I was so confident. I went, well, I'll open with that. And the rest of the gig was tricky. So I guess my answer is, if you're going to do a gig in Finland, prepare. But yeah, you just try it in front of sort of smaller crowds, so you might try stuff. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't, you know what I mean?
Do you worry about like
Are you a performer? Sorry.
Oh, sorry.
No, I'm a film student.
Oh, nice.
You're really
Ace.
funny.
Oh, thanks. That's very kind of you.
Do you worry about going too deep in the weeds on British politics when you're
I've
like
never heard that
in the
phrase.
New York?
Too deep in the weeds. I like that. Huh. That means just going too deep on a subject.
Yeah. Or like, you too esoteric on a subject when you're in the States and
Too
it's a
deep
UK
in the
subject.
weeds. I heard a phrase in. I did an impression of an Australian man. I was speaking like that, and this bloke said on TV, "Mate, I'm not pissing in your pocket, but that's a great impression." And I was like, whoa,
I never
whoa,
heard
whoa.
that either. I like
Exactly,
that.
but this is a phrase in Australia that when they're complimenting you, they say, "I'm not pissing in your pocket," but that was really good.
It's like I'm not kissing your ass or like whacking your car or something.
But
Yeah.
So going too deep on the weeds.
In.
Sorry, in.
In the weeds.
So going too deep on the weeds.
In the
is-
weeds.
Yeah.
Oh, on the weeds. Yeah, it would be that. Yeah.
So you can be in the weeds, but not on the weeds.
Too deep on the weed also sounds like something a narc would say.
Yes.
You're going too deep on the weed,
Yeah.
teenager?
That sounds like what my mum would say. She was stoned. I'm too deep on the weed. Have you ever got stoned with your mum? I did.
No.
It's we did it for a TV show in this great country. We're in Portland, and me and my mum got stoned. We watched Star Wars, which is a great experience. And she was like, "This is rubbish. Why is it when they get their lightsabers out, you never see any moths?" And you're like, "There's a good point. There's a very good point."
I got stoned with my dad and we watched Lone Survivor with Mark Wahlberg, where it's about a bunch of like Navy SEALs just getting decimated in Afghanistan. And I was like this the whole time.
Yeah.
And I think he was too, but he hit it better than me.
Right. Yeah. And then you watch that, you go to bed?
I just kind of like walked away in the middle of the movie. And I was like
that.
But when you're in the States, say you're at the Gramercy Theater this weekend, do you sort of like temper how much you're going to talk about Brexit or how far you're going to go?
Well, I
assume that everyone's is caught up.
I don't know. So I will basically, the first gig was very much going to be a blah, and then the second gig I'll kind of form it, and Saturday I'll be tighter, and then I'll leave. But I'm doing an hour, and that hour and a half, so you can sort of just weave about. Do you know what I mean? Like a lot of the gigs I tend to do in the States are a bit more freeform because they're so small. So it's like a 500-seater. So it's just, you can just kind of,
Pretty big size though.
But compared to the UK, so if I'm doing gigs, like that's from a gig of mine, so that's at the O2, so there's like 15,000. So you have to be correct and do all the material in the right order. Whereas 500, you can be a bit loose. And if you kind of cock up, you can kind of reference it. So it can be a bit more on the hoof, I guess.
It's fun. I feel like there's a lot of comedians who would say 500 for them is where they have to
No,
be
that was
on.
Oh, really? Oh, okay.
And like, a crowd of like 40 is when
Yes.
you can be loose
Yeah,
and play.
a crowd of 40 is like, because like this is lovely, but it does very much feel like you're being held hostage at a house party. It has that kind of, are we going to get any drinks? Is that? Because we were invited off the street for drinks. So I find this slightly more intimidating than I would 500 or the old Bon Jovi gig.
You should start coming out to Living on a Prayer now.
Mate, my mum would love that. I got my mum to warm up for me last time I was there.
Are you serious?
Yeah.
In front of 15,000 people?
Well, not to do stand-up, but to 1, 2, 1, 2. So mum was there just 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. And then she started singing like Lady Gaga songs and that. Ra, 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 ra. All right, mum, we're good. Come on.
She seems like a really good sport.
She's great. Yeah, well, I think I'm funny because of her, that she's just a really funny lady and a very silly lady. And my dad really determined and gets stuff done. So I'm kind of like a good combo of the two. But yeah, she's hilarious.
His ambition and his determination and her
Brilliance. Yeah, she's wonderful. Like playing charades at Christmas with my mum is one of the joys. Just so funny. Like, you're not allowed to talk. What? Well, that's how the game works. Is it? Like that. There was a moment where she went, right, one word. Already, you've ruined it. You went, what? Film. It's a film. Okay, yeah.
My mum does that too, yeah.
So she was doing this. It was great. She was like this. Snatch, you idiot. Snatch. Like that. And that was Christmas in the Howard household. But not trying to be funny. That's the beauty of my mum. She isn't trying to tell. She just has a way about her that's just naturally hilarious. And because I did this TV show where we travelled around America, and then we went to India and Thailand and Vietnam and South Korea. It was just brilliant. And the reason we went is because my mum is a very normal working class lady from the west of England. And I said, what do you want to do with the rest of your life? She was like, it was her 60th birthday. I said, what do you want to do for the rest of it? And she honestly went, I just want to be, when I'm older, in an old folks home where they don't hit you. And it was so bleak that I thought, well, the very least I can do...
Very low expectation.
I'll give you memories, and then you can have lots of memories that you can enjoy in between the beatings. So I'm joking, that's not going to happen.
No one's going to be able to stop.
That is not the noise you ever want to hear.
Yeah.
But the point is, I just thought, God, but she expects so little of the world, just not getting hit, that I just thought, God, I'm so lucky that I get to do things like this because of her. I should really take her to all these places.
What were your mother and father's thoughts when you first started doing comedy?
They were really supportive and very...
In a way?
Yeah, like... I just went away and did it. I didn't make a show of it. So for the first 3 years, I kind of kept it a secret, really. And then...
you didn't march into the living room one day and be like, I'm going to be a comedian.
Yeah, no. Just, well, you're not. You're not funny, weird little thing. And so I just went away. And then my mum came to see me the first ever time 4 years into my career. And it was amazing. And it was a little small gig in Bristol, and I didn't realise the guy on before me had this act where he had like a fake penis, and he would urinate on the crowd. I didn't know this. So my mum's first experience of going to a comedy club was this guy getting out a fake dick and peeing on her. And to be honest, after that, I was never going to struggle. Like, do you know what I mean? I was always going to be better than that.
What were her thoughts on the fake penis?
Not for me, that guy. Not for me. No, I didn't enjoy it.
And nobody did. It was an unusual act. And there were about 5 little old ladies who used to come and see me when I was very young in Bristol. And as they were sort of like walking out, I was at the back. They didn't see me. They're walking out. They were like, "We came to see Russell Howard, not get pissed on." Jesus Christ, like that. And then they came back after the interval and they kind of sat down and really enjoyed it. So I had this, like, very early on, I had a crowd in Bristol, like, of jugglers and little old ladies that would come and watch me.
Like moms love you.
Mums and jugglers.
Moms and jugglers.
Yeah. And then, so then Mum came to watch and now really enjoys it. And I love having them there. And, it's weirdly, not to get too wanky, but it's really brought our family closer together because my sister's an actress as well. So Kerry performs and then we'll go see her. And then I'll do a gig and everyone comes to see me. And then all my family will come. And I've got loads of cousins, so they'll come down. And
where do you think this performer side of your family comes from? Like, you and your sister are both performers.
Yeah.
Where do you think that comes from?
I don't know, really. Just boredom. When we were kids, we didn't really have anything. So... just spent a lot of my time in the 90s sat on walls thinking, sort of dreaming. I didn't have a Walkman even. So if I'd have had a phone, I wouldn't be here. How can you possibly, if you're a kid, how can you possibly, you don't need to think because the world's there for you. So I was just very lucky. I'd sort of, little silly thoughts would drift into my head. And then I'd say them to my mates and they might laugh. And it became this little hobby. And then it became a job, and I'm still like that. I still have like little ideas and go, oh, that'd be quite funny. So, I don't know. I have like a desire to perform. I couldn't write. I've been asked to write books. I couldn't do that because I couldn't entertain myself. I can't think of anything worse. But then you can't invite people to your house to watch you write a book, and then listen to this, isn't it? You know, like, do you know what I mean? Like J.K. Rowling, and he's called Harry. Yeah.
You can co-write and you can have someone dictate or taking down what you're saying.
Yeah, but then that feels like cheating, doesn't it? You know, but I guess the point is, actually, I probably could do that a lot easier than I could. I find it very hard to entertain myself, but there's nothing like an audience to bring you to life. If it was just me here on my own, I'd just be, you know.
Russell, man, it's been a pleasure talking.
I really enjoyed that. I mean,
Yeah.
let's not muck around. We covered a lot of bases there.
I think we did.
Yeah.
Should we bring it back around one more time to, I think, the most important topic we discussed?
No.
Okay. You heard the person over here, didn't you, when I just said
What
that?
did you say? Did you say no?
She just went, oh, God.
Oh, really? Well, are you a farmer? In which that'd be the worst interview ever. Just imagine that you've left the farm, you've come to New York for a new life. You're like, hopefully they won't mention anything.
I'm wondering
Dad, it's me. I'm coming home.
Who they're more offended for, the sex toys or the cows? You know, like maybe they're a sex toy fanatic and they're like, how dare you bring cows into this?
That is interesting. It's deep. Yeah. I hope you guys enjoyed that. I really enjoyed it. It was fun. That was a real pleasure. Thanks.
Yeah, absolutely. Russell Howard, everybody.
See you later. See you later.